an intentional approach to syllabus design for EAP courses, and it's presented by Rhonda Petree. And I'm Simon Wright, and I'll be moderating the session today with my colleague Eve Richmond. So during the webinar, you'll be able to hear Rhonda and see her slides, but you won't be able to see Rhonda herself. You won't need a microphone. And if you do want to ask a question, just have a look down there for the questions box. And what I will do is put some questions at the end of the webinar in the question and answer session to Rhonda. So yeah, you might write questions during the webinar, but we can't really respond to all of them, so we'll do that at the end. And as I've mentioned, a recording of the webinar will be on the website in a few days' time, and also we'll send you an email with the certificate of attendance. So I'm very pleased to welcome Rhonda as today's presenter. Rhonda Petree has been working in the field of English language teaching since 1999, when she was a teacher in Kazakhstan. She's taught English to adults and school-age students in public and private settings in the US, and during the 2018-19 academic year, she was US Fulbright Scholar and visiting lecturer at Narva College of the University of Tartu in Estonia. She's currently a lecturer of TESOL and EAP courses at the University of Wisconsin River Falls, where she also founded the Academic English Language Program. She conducts teacher training, education training sessions, and is a frequent presenter at professional conferences. So if I unmute you, over to you, Rhonda.
Hello, thank you very much, Simon. All right, thanks everyone for joining me today for the talk on how to design a syllabus for EAP courses. Today, I plan to say a few words about teaching values and course objectives. I'll share a planning tool and activities with you, and then finally show a completed course calendar. I don't know about you, but when I see a course syllabi that contains information like this, Week 1, capitalization errors, read Chapter 2. Week 2, dangling modifiers, complete homework. I'm not very inspired or motivated, and I can't imagine that students are very inspired or motivated either. I believe creating a syllabus and subsequently designing a course is a creative and intellectual endeavor, and the way in which we present information to our students can foster interest in the course material and encourage deep learning. When instructors create courses and design syllabi, we have the opportunity to demonstrate our philosophy of teaching and to represent what we value in the teaching and learning environment. Among other things, I value aligning course activities with learning outcomes, creating a student-centered learning environment, providing ample practice opportunities through routine exercises and engagement with the course material, and providing a variety of ways for students to demonstrate their learning through formative and summative assessments. So a question to ask yourself is, what are your teaching values as you approach syllabus design? How to start planning a course? Well, the first step ought to be obtaining the learning objectives or outcomes for the course you'll be teaching. What do the students need to be able to do by the end of the instructional period? What I have for you on the screen are the course objectives for an academic writing course that I'm currently teaching. In the next few slides, I'll walk you through how I created a course syllabus based on these learning objectives. To begin, I create a planning tool like this for myself. I list each of the outcomes in the left column. I have 2 listed here. Then I have columns for teaching and learning materials, where I list specific chapters in textbooks or guest speakers or videos, etc. The next column, practice activities, is where I list the routine activities such as exercises in textbooks or routine readings or writing activities. And the final column, titled How Will Students Demonstrate Their Learning, is where I list the evaluations or assessments. These might be things like essays or exams or projects. Using a tool like this is useful because it can help you make sure that you are indeed incorporating all of the course learning outcomes into your teaching. Additionally, this tool can help you be more dynamic and creative with your planning. You can evaluate which parts of a textbook or which materials are useful for a specific learning outcome and plan accordingly. You can also consider creative ways for students to demonstrate their learning. Let me walk you through this planning tool a bit more. We know that language learners benefit from a variety of rich input, so it's useful to consider the range of options for the materials we can use in our teaching. The materials might be certain parts of textbooks or videos or TED Talks or readings, including books or novels or short stories or speakers or other authentic sources. We also know that students need a lot of practice opportunities in order to master new skills. And it's very helpful to establish predictable routines for students to do this practice. When we build in routine activities such as weekly quizzes or journal writing, homework completion, or discussion groups, students know what to expect and can get into the habit of preparing well to do their work. I feel strongly about providing many practice activities to students because we know how important practice is. We know that readers need 8 to 12 encounters with a word to remember or to be able to use it. We know that language learners need to understand close to 98% of what they read in order to comprehend the information. And we know that practice testing can lead to better results on exams and tests. Once we have identified materials and considered practice activities, we need to determine how students will demonstrate their learning. And I really believe that variety is important. Some students are going to be best able to demonstrate their learning through an exam, while others might be best able to show their learning through an oral conversation or a visual poster project, for example. I aim to incorporate one personal research project or project of some sort into each course I teach in order to give students the opportunity to explore a topic in depth and become something of an expert on that topic. Personal research and project-based learning can be very motivating and meaningful for our students. Now let's look at some materials and evaluation tools in the different skill areas. For reading courses, of course, we can use textbooks. We can also use novels or graphic or verse novels. We can incorporate nonfiction materials online or through print. And our practice and learning activities may include quizzes, such as for vocabulary comprehension or tests. We may also engage students in book clubs or readers theater or have them complete book trailers for reading projects they've done. My colleagues and I have used the smore.com website to create book reviews after our students complete a reading project. The students work in small groups to read a book using the literature circle technique, and then work in a group to create book reviews. This website, smore.com, is a free user-friendly tool that has worked really well for this type of project. In speaking and listening courses, the materials may include textbooks or TED Talks. We may do conversational analysis or situational dialogue analysis. And the practice and production activities may include things like, again, quizzes, especially for vocabulary. We may also be doing interviews. Students may conduct interviews, perhaps alone or on a one-to-one basis. Students may be engaged in speaking and listening groups or do speeches, presentations, or conduct role plays. Recently, I created a speaking and listening project based on TED Talks. And for this project, students met with in small groups in a discussion group for a certain period of time to discuss a TED Talk that the group had chosen. Each person in that group had a specific role to guide their contributions to the discussion. The project was designed to help students improve their oral fluency skills and to assist them as they learned new words or phrases, as they connected ideas to other concepts, and increased their awareness of pronunciation features. These bolded points on your screen are they were the learning outcomes for this particular course. So I incorporated those into this project for my students. In this particular project, the students were in these groups, as I mentioned, and they each had a specific role. There was a discussion leader, a word wizard, a creative connector, and a pronunciation prowess. This was an oral communications course after all. And so to prepare for the discussion, students needed to watch a TED Talk, analyze the transcript, and complete a particular role sheet. The roles changed each week, and the students needed to complete these forms before the class meetings. During the class meetings, the students met in a group and they went through their role sheets, beginning with the discussion leader, and they had a discussion. And then after the discussion, they completed a discussion briefing sheet. This project was really focused on student choice. As a group, they decided which TED Talks to watch and analyze from a pre-selected group that I had chosen for them. And then the work was scaffolded in a way that required students to be prepared for discussion and then ready to talk. And it worked really well in that regard. In grammar courses, the materials that we may use could include textbooks or authentic sources, signs around campus or in the community or other websites. And the practice materials and other activities we would use in the courses may include quizzes or tests, maybe writing journals. Students may create posters or grammar newsletters or handbooks in this regard. And often I try to include poster projects, and I've done this with many grammar courses too. Poster projects allow students who think visually or have creative talents to shine in ways that they don't always get to do in a traditional essay or test situation. And posters can be created to fit a wide variety of learning objectives and to have the students use the language both in a print format and an oral format. And students can be really proud of the work they've done in a visual setting like this. For some students, it works really well. In writing courses, the materials we may use may obviously include ESL or EFL textbooks or other university course books or journal articles. I often like to incorporate other materials, other university course materials into the writing courses so that students have an opportunity to become familiar with writing styles or genres outside of or very authentic writing and styles and from different fields. And the activities that we can do in writing courses obviously include quizzes again, but we might be doing writing journals, writing essays, giving presentations, doing research projects, creating academic posters, or compiling portfolios. In academic writing courses, it can be very valuable to have students complete research projects and compile their research into an academic poster rather than a traditional essay. I've often hosted mini poster fairs after students complete academic posters, so students can share their written and research orally in addition to a kind of a traditional written essay format. These mini academic poster fairs also give students experience with an authentic professional academic activity And again, once students have done an activity like this for the first time, the next time that they're doing perhaps undergraduate research or graduate school presentations, if that's the case, they've already have some basis of experience with this. And that can be a real confidence booster and help students shine in these areas. So as we go along gathering materials, considering a variety of materials to incorporate into our courses, and identifying practice activities, I fill in this instructor planning tool to go along so I can monitor that I have that specific materials are meeting specific outcomes, and then I'm able to see that the practice activities align with how students will demonstrate their learning. So I go along and fill in this chart until
Rhonda, sorry, very sorry to interrupt you. Could you just click in the middle of the slide? Because people are saying they got the toolbar's blocking the bottom.
Aha.
That's it. If you just click in the middle of the slide, then you can tab through.
Sorry about
That's
that.
all.
Yep. Give me just a second.
That's it. You should be able to, if you just
Whoops.
tap in the middle or something, it should disappear. There you go. That's it. And then
There
you
we
can
go.
tap through as normal. Sorry, very sorry to interrupt you. Thanks.
Oh, sorry about that. I should have had that going all along. Sorry about that. There we go. So here we go. Now we can see how the instructor planning tool gets filled in as we go along with the gathering of the materials and analyzing practice activities and considering the different ways that students can demonstrate their learning. Until we eventually have a chart like this, a very user-friendly chart. And in this case, you can see I've used my instructor planning tool to create a student-friendly version, which is intended to be distributed to the students. So I've got dates and the units, which I fill in later. And you'll see I've changed the materials into how to prepare for class meetings. So it's really focused for the students, how to prepare for class meetings, how to practice your learning, and then finally how to prove your learning. And I like using this prepare, practice, prove technique here so that the emphasis is on the students and their responsibility for being prepared for class meetings, how they need to practice for their class meetings and how to practice their learning. And then finally, what they need to do to prove that they have learned the material. So the student-friendly version is distributed to the students like this. And this is how I've gone from working from learning objectives into creating a student-friendly version for the students. So intentional syllabus design really occurs when course activities are aligned with the learning objectives presented in a student-centered learning environment and fashion where students have ample practice opportunities and that there are a variety of ways for students to demonstrate their learning. Thank you very much. And welcome questions if you may have them.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, a lot of information in there. That was really, really good. I'm just having a look down the questions that we have, but
Sure.
please do enter in anything else that you have that you've got. Let me just pick on something I've been asked so far, just to start us off. I think some people were saying there were some really good examples there, some great activities, and some very good ones for the higher level students. But would you have any advice on what you could use with lower level students, particularly sort of A1 level or really basic students?
Sure. You know, I think often it's best for us to think as to how we can perhaps modify the content for our variety of learners, not always modifying like, well, so much the output. We can really modify a variety of those region areas, right? And so, for example, for reading, I particularly like to use graphic novels or these verse novels for students at a variety of reading levels. Verse novels are like poetry on a page. If you're not familiar with them, it's VERSE. And what's really appealing about verse novels is that there's quite a lot of white space on a paper on the page of a book, but yet the students read through an entire book. And I think there's real value in our students having done that, to have read a complete book. So I can't say enough about verse novels in addition to graphic novels, but a variety of websites also provide information at like nonfiction news sources or news articles at a variety of levels. And those are the other types of ways that we can differentiate for students at different levels.
Great, thank you. There's a number of questions, and it is a big question of how to motivate students, the activities that you would use for that. But I guess a lot of what you've done, it is intentionally there because it is motivational. But have you got any favorite activities or anything you would suggest there, just on that topic of how to motivate the students?
Yeah, it is a really important question, and I would say choice. Offering students as much choice as reasonably possible is helpful. And then in that regards, if you're working with TED Talks, for example, I've often taken like the top 25 most popular TED Talks and presented those to the students and allowed them to choose which TED Talks they're most interested in, right? So there's a choice, and the students then have some ownership over that project. For grammar courses, it can be somewhat motivating if students can like demonstrate their learning through a poster project, for example, explaining parts of a sentence, adjectives or noun phrases, different things. But if they can have a blank piece of paper and or a blank poster, it's really satisfying, I believe, to allow students to express themselves through their artwork or their drawing abilities or their painting abilities, as long as they're still meeting the objectives. If it's a way that students can choose to show what they've learned, that can be motivating. So it's really about choice in terms of motivation.
Okay, thank you. There's lots of questions here, actually. This is great. Question here, how would you integrate feedback into the syllabus, both for students and teachers, actually?
Mm-hmm. Feedback is obviously a crucial aspect of what we're doing, both as we're providing that feedback to students and getting it themselves. So if a student, for example, is for an oral communications course, if they're doing a presentation perhaps to a small group or to a large group of students, having forms and checklists that the students have seen ahead of time and then that the instructor can fill out during that presentation is a valuable way to do that. We can also take away some of that pressure in an oral communications course, for example, if the students can give a presentation where they record themselves and speak, and then the instructor can give feedback in an oral fashion like that too. It takes away some of that maybe nervousness that people get if people are looking at them or all eyes are on them. But if it's just a feedback session from an instructor to a student via audio recording, that can be a way to get useful feedback to a student without some of those extra irritations or extra anxiety areas. So those would be a few thoughts that come to mind regarding feedback.
Okay, and just a question here actually on the title of your talk. Could you specify once again what an intentional approach means?
Yeah, it means having a plan and having a, a tool, for example, in terms of going through your planning. I guess the other way to think about this is often when we are assigned courses, you know, that we might get the title of the course and where it meets and a textbook. And it may be a really fantastic textbook to use for the course, but there also may be more to add to that course beyond using only one textbook in a course. And so that's why I think it's really helpful to use that planning tool. And it is a backwards design planning tool where we list out um, what our objectives are and the materials, how I'll have the students practice and how I'll have the students prove their learning, because then I am being intentional about making sure that my teaching throughout that instructional period is achieving each of those objectives. There's nothing worse than getting to the end of a semester or an instructional period and realizing maybe you haven't met a few of those objectives of the course, and the next level teacher is expecting that the students can do this work. And so it really is important for us to be intentional about the planning and the teaching that goes on during the time period that we are with the students.
Okay, thank you. Another question here asks, can we change the objectives according to the needs of the students?
Hmm. Well, it sounds like a question that one would need to have with their supervisor or in their department meeting. Is there flexibility in that regard? Often the answer is that you can add to those learning objectives, obviously, once you get to know your students and to see what their needs are. But oftentimes, those learning objectives are necessary in order for the whole program, for the students at the next level, for example, and the courses at the next level. The students will be expected to know or to be able to complete those particular skills when they're at the following level. So certainly it's a question for supervisors and your colleagues, but do have that conversation.
Okay, just looking through the questions here. Let's see if we can answer this one. What is your suggestion when this framework is used for engineering students? I integrate
Mm,
CLIL into my teaching
mm,
methodology.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. Maybe I'll flip back to that that screen. You know, uh, it the tool here, the instructor planning tool can be used for any course. I mean, look, it's really quite basic learning outcomes, and so the learning outcomes for the CLIL course, if it's engineering, if that's what I heard you say. So listing those learning outcomes, and again, there might be 5 to 10 of those learning outcomes, but once they're there on the left-hand side, you can plan accordingly. Which materials are you going to use in order to meet those objectives? What types of practice activities do the students need in that engineering course, in that CLIL course? And again, how are the students going to demonstrate their learning? Once you have it all lined up like that, this tool is useful in a wide variety of courses.
Excellent, thank you very much. I think we've probably got time for a last couple. Question here, I think this comes back to the other one about maybe the flexibility of it or asking students, but how can I make my course more student-centered?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well,
And there's a lot
hopefully
of
you,
people, it's a similar sort of area, and you know how to get it to tailored for a student's need.
yeah. Um, well, I've tried to weave that through the presentation, because I certainly believe too that creating the student-centered learning environment is helpful, and that's why I tried to introduce a variety of ways for students to demonstrate their learning. It's not always through a paper and pencil test that feels very student friendly for all students. What if they do demonstrate their skills better in an oral environment when they're speaking or listening? What if they do demonstrate their skills better in a small discussion group, for example? When we break out of a mold, if that happens to be the case of teaching and testing and teaching and testing, and create a variety of ways for students to practice those skills and creatively demonstrate their learning, I think we are on the way to becoming a more student-centered teacher and creating that environment for our students.
Okay, and I think final one here. What teamwork activities would you suggest using in class?
Great question. Maybe I'll forward here a bit to share a little bit more about these a few examples. I'll think about reading and encourage anyone who's thinking of how to use teamwork. The literature circle model, if you're not familiar with it, go out and learn about it. The literature circle model is a way for students for teachers to create small groups of students to complete a reading task, for read a book, nonfiction or fiction, for example. And in the literature circle model, it is a very scaffolded, student-friendly activity where students have particular roles to complete. And I was sharing with you this TED Talk discussion group, and I modeled this project after the literature circle model. So the point is that if you just tell students, get together, discuss this book, or get together and talk about this TED Talk, the chances are you won't have a very high quality discussion. Maybe you will, maybe those students will, but they may not. They may need more scaffolding and support in order to take their learning to a deeper level. And through the literature circle model is one way for students to work in small groups or teams, complete activities. They are responsible for those activities, and then to produce a final result. I highly recommend looking into that teaching technique for that question.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I think that's about all we've got time for here. So